Hi you guys, I hope you're doing well as always. You haven't heard from me in a while. I want to first start by saying that I'm no longer living in Chicago. I'm not in Korea and I am not in Spain. Right now I'm more stable and I am living in Detroit, Michigan. And I've been living here for about 10 months now, so I think it's about time for me to come to you guys and give you a video about living in Detroit. But I want to start by saying I'm not an expert of all things Detroit. There are people who have been living here much longer than me. There are people who were born and raised here, and I'm sure they know more than I do, but I'm just giving my personal experience. And if me explaining, what it's like for me living here and what I've learned along the way can help other people who are thinking about living in Detroit or visiting Detroit, then I think that, this video is not in vain. And I really enjoy looking at different resources of people just talking about their experiences living or traveling in a certain area, because it gives me an eye or like an insight of how that experience could be. Now, I'm not saying that your experience is going to be exactly like mine's, because every experience is going to be different, but I can give you some knowledge that can help you along the way if you are thinking about living in Detroit. So, Detroit right now is a city that has gotten a lot of attention and recognition, both nationally and internationally. There's a lot of cool things happening here. There's a lot of innovation, and people want to know what it's about. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of what it's about. So I'm going to break up this conversation into 7 different segments. I've done some research, and experts tend to speak on the livability of cities using these characteristics, and those are weather, crime, employment, cost of living, education, housing, and nearby amenities. So let's get started. Okay, so first I want to talk about weather. Here in Detroit, you are going to get 4 seasons. Right now, it is summertime. It is really, really hot. It's really, really muggy. And it's at the beginning, so it's just going to get more hot and more muggy. So if you're a person who doesn't really like that type of severe weather, that's kind of how it is here. And also the winters, they're pretty, it's pretty cold here. I'm not even gonna lie. We get a nice amount of snow here. Just be aware that this is a place that gets pretty cold in the winter time. It is a place that gets an abundance of snow. And as far as spring and fall, they're pretty short. One thing I noticed when I was living in Korea is that there were legit 4 seasons, and they all were like 3 months apart, like a piece. But here, spring's gonna be 1 month and fall is gonna be 1 month. So yeah, I don't really know what else there is to say about that. The most important piece to know is that you're going to have some pretty hot summers with some mugginess, and you're going to have some pretty cold winters with a nice amount of snow. And as far as employment, I want to say that here you are going to have less competition for jobs than you would in places like Chicago, DC, New York City, because although this is a major city, there is not an overabundance of people. Over the past several years, unfortunately, Detroit has seen a decline in their population. Right now, the population is stabilizing, and I'm sure in the near future is going to increase. Right now, it just isn't that many people here, and there are a lot of jobs. There are a lot of big companies. Of course, the auto industry is pretty big here, so you have the big 3 companies like Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, so there's plenty of jobs to be had there. And then you also have large technology companies, and just companies that cater to people with all type of degrees and backgrounds. So like Quicken Loans would be another example. So you have a lot of huge industries here that are looking to hire people who have the experience. And of course, like any other city, it will be easier for you to find a job if you have a bachelor's degree or some form of education or some trade experience. Like if you have experience in urban planning, sustainability efforts, city planning, social entrepreneurship is another thing, technology, engineering, you are definitely going to be in a good place here if you're looking for a job. The next thing I want to talk about is crime. Before I moved here, I heard that it was very dangerous in Detroit. There was a lot of crime that was happening. However, I don't really feel unsafe here. I have not experienced any crime since I've been here. I know of a few friends who have had their cars vandalized, but it's petty theft. As far as like violent crimes, I haven't experienced anything like that, and I haven't had any friends that experienced that. Now, I do want to say that I am privileged in the way that I don't live in certain neighborhoods that would have a large amount of crime, but from my personal experience, I feel safe here. And if you're thinking about like coming here to visit, you know, when people visit cities, they tend to kind of hang out around the downtown area. The downtown area is extremely safe. There are a lot of security guards who circulate the downtown region, a lot of police. So you're always going to see police officers and people who can help you if you are in harm. Definitely don't worry about safety if you're thinking about visiting here. And of course, different areas has different amounts of crime, and you definitely want to like be aware of your atmosphere and your environment when you are traveling throughout the city of Detroit. But overall, it's pretty safe here and I don't feel unsafe. And the next thing is cost of living. Okay, I first want to start by saying that car insurance is extremely high here. Most people are paying around $300-$400 for car insurance here in the city if they are Detroit residents. Now, there are a lot of people who just can't afford the car insurance, which is understandable. So maybe they have their car in someone else's name who lives outside of the city, or they are not claiming residency in the city of Detroit. Everything else is pretty cheap here. And also, I have a lot of friends who have no car at all, and they just bike everywhere, or they take public transportation. So there are ways to get around the whole car insurance situation. If you really want to live here, you shouldn't let that stop you. It's pretty cheap to live here. You can get a nice apartment in the downtown region or around the downtown area for a really affordable price, like way cheaper than you would be able to get in any other major city in those hot spots, in those like popular locations. Rent is pretty cheap, especially if you want to go the roommate route. You can just pay like $300-$400 or cheaper for rent. A standard one-bedroom apartment, I would say, costs about let's say $500. If you want to go around the downtown area, you can get a place for like $700-$800, which is not cheap, but it's like super convenient for you to just, you know, live your daily life. If you work in the downtown area, which a lot of people do, very convenient. It's a walkable area. The next thing I want to talk about is education. So if you're thinking about moving to Detroit and you have children, as a whole, the education climate in the Detroit public schools is not the best. There are a lot of problems, a lot of people trying to solve those problems, but at this very moment, it's not really doing well. However, there are private schools that are really great. There are some charter schools that are all right, and there are also some public schools that are doing very well also. When you are moving to Detroit, you want to definitely consider where or like what neighborhood you want to live in if you do want your child to go to a public school, because you would probably want to live in the locations that would allow them to go to a good school. And the next part is housing. I kind of talked about that a little bit. One thing that Detroit is known for is the abundance of abandoned buildings. Now, this is something that's real. In a lot of communities, there are abandoned buildings. People can blame the amount of abandoned buildings on a few things. It's not just one reason that they exist. One reason is the fires in 1967. There was a big riot that was founded on race. So it was, race riots. And as a result of those riots, a lot of people who were able to leave the city, something that we know as white flight. So a lot of the white people, they took their families, they took their resources, and they moved out to the suburbs. And, they left homes that couldn't be filled as quickly as they were left vacant. And then another thing is the economic crash in 2008, 2009. The auto industry started to fail, along with a lot of other businesses and corporations around the country, and those individuals lost their jobs and could no longer afford their homes. So they were kicked out of their homes, and those homes couldn't get filled as quickly as they were left vacant once again, and a lot of them are still just sitting today. There are other reasons, but you know, this video is not long enough to touch on that. However, the point is there are a lot of abandoned buildings, but there's also very viable homes that are up to be bought, and the only negative about that is that you may have to pay some back taxes that the previous owner didn't pay. However, there are definitely some really great homes that can be bought in Detroit at a lower rate that you would buy a beautiful home in any other part of this country. But as far as these homes that you hear about, like on the news, being like $1, okay, maybe you can buy a home that's super cheap, like $100 home, but you're gonna have to do a lot of work and put thousands and thousands of dollars into renovating that home, and you're also going to probably have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars of back taxes that was left behind from the previous owner. So don't think you're gonna come here and just, you know, like buy a mansion for $1,000. It's not happening. It sounds too good to be true. It is too good to be true. If you're looking for an apartment, there are many options. We have different residential communities being built constantly. Like there is currently construction happening like right near my apartment complex. You won't have a problem finding an apartment, a nice apartment. Okay, and the last thing that I want to touch on is nearby amenities. A lot of people who've done research on Detroit has probably found time and time again that there is a food desert. And I want to say that yes, there is a food desert if you consider large food chains and you're used to going to places like Kroger, Aldi, Trader Joe's, that kind of things. There are not as many of those like huge chain stores in the city area. If you go out to the suburbs, you'll find them all around. But in the city, there's not a lot of those. However, there are smaller, like family owned or like small business grocery stores all around. I live in walking distance from 2 grocery stores. Yes, they are smaller than like your local Walmart or your local Kroger. However, I get everything that I need there for a good price. I can get fresh fruits and vegetables. That's not a problem. However, I want to say again that a lot of people do not experience what I do, and they do live in neighborhoods that do not have as many grocery stores, unfortunately. That is a reality. I guess to wrap this part up, is there a food desert like people say it is on the news? No, I don't think it's as severe as people make it. However, could Detroit use some more grocery stores? Yes, we really could. And I think that everybody would benefit from more grocery stores, specifically grocery stores that has fresh produce, fruits, vegetables, that kind of thing. Overall, I want to say that, like I said before, I've been living in Detroit for 10 months. I'm happy here. I feel safe here. I feel comfortable here. Honestly, it just feels like any regular large city. However, it's interesting because it's like a large city with a small town feel. So that's pretty unique. I think Detroit has a lot to offer. I think Detroit has a lot of opportunities for those who are willing to work hard and seek them. I think there is a lot of beauty in Detroit. We always talk about the abandoned buildings, but people don't talk about the fact that there's so much, like so many beautiful parks in Detroit. There's like a lot of greenery. You have the Detroit River, you have Belle Isle. If you don't know what Belle Isle is, do some research. It's a cool island in the middle of Detroit and Windsor, Canada, and it's amazing. It's huge. It has wildlife. It has a beach. It's awesome. People never talk about that when they talk about Detroit. And the thing that I really like the most about Detroit is that there is so much happening right now. The city is rapidly changing for the better, and it's just gonna go up from here. So I feel like I should stay here in order to see the magic that's to come. And I'm not talking about just what's happening in like the major core areas of the city. I'm talking about all around the city. There is there's fantastic things happening. There's small businesses opening every day, and there's like a lot of economic and community development that's happening. There's a lot of cool Detroit residents who are founding their own nonprofits that's doing excellent work, and there's a lot of research that's happening here to see like how cities can improve and how cities can grow from, you know, coming from economic disparity. There's a lot of work that's going into entrepreneurship. There's a lot of work and creative ideas going into how we can improve education, not just as a city, but as a country. I think living in Detroit will give you access to all of these hotbeds, all of these cool things that's happening. And I think it's really interesting because since Detroit did have like the economic decline, and you know, like they did get to a low point, and right now it's like they've learned so much from that, and they're really taking what they learned and using it to create the best city in the country. So I'm really excited to be here, and if anyone has any questions or comments about living in Detroit, please just comment below, and I don't mind making a future video about this topic. If you have any more video ideas, leave them below, and that's all I have for you today. I will talk to you guys later.